Hello, everybody. My name is Autumn Seymour, and today I'm going to be talking about my research paper, which is called Liberty Abroad, Limits at Home: The Contradictions of American Freedom in Times of Crisis. So, basically, the question that I decided to focus on is in what ways has the United States promoted freedom and democracy around the world while also restricting people's rights at home? The reason I chose this topic is because as I've gone through these dual credit classes and other history classes, I feel like I kept noticing this pattern that America always presents itself as this country that stands for freedom and justice. But then when you actually look at what's happening inside the country, especially during stressful or dangerous times, it doesn't always match what we try to stand for. This contradiction really stood out to me, and I wanted to dig deeper into it instead of just brushing past it. A lot of this essay is me trying to take a new approach to things. That also includes my research. So, this was my first time around experimenting with AI and Perplexity. So, I used Perplexity to help me with my research. It didn't write anything for me, but it helped me find more reliable and links for my sources much faster. Also, interesting links, stuff that I probably wouldn't have found just by myself. And it makes me excited for the future of AI, just seeing what something as small as a generative AI can do for our classwork, even as something as small as helping me find more articles for my research paper. But for my paper, I decided to focus on three main time periods. So, World War II, the Cold War, and the War on Terror after 9/11. I chose these three specifically because they're all moments when the US felt seriously threatened. These weren't just small issues, they were times when the country felt like its safety or its way of life was at risk. But I noticed that every time that happens, our government tends to tighten control at home, even while claiming to protect freedom. So, starting off with World War II, the US was fighting against dictators and totalitarianism of freedom, but at the same time, here at home, the government forced Japanese Americans into camps. And a lot of those people were actually American citizens, which makes it a lot worse. They were moved from their homes and placed into camps just based off fear and suspicion, not actual proof. So while the US was saying that it was defending freedom, it was also taking away the rights of its own people. On top of that, the military was also still segregated. So black soldiers didn't even get equal opportunities, even though they were fighting in the war too. So overall, it shows that freedom wasn't actually really being applied equally. Moving on to the Cold War, the US was trying to stop the spread of communism and again presented itself as a defender of freedom. But inside our country, fear of communism led to things like the Red Scare and the McCarthyism. During this time, people were investigated for being suspected of having like certain political beliefs. Some people even lost their jobs, their reputations, and their entire lives over accusations that weren't even proven. There were loyal oaths and a lot of pressure to conform. So again, you see this pattern. America is promoting freedom, but at the same time limiting people's freedom of speech and just freedoms in general just because of fear. And finally, after 9/11, we saw a more modern example, the War on Terror. The U.S. responded by expanding surveillance through things like the Patriot Act, which allowed the government to monitor phone calls, emails, and other personal information more easily. There were also cases where people suspected of terrorism were detained without full trials, which brings up the serious issue with due process. And a lot of these policies disproportionately affected Muslim Americans, which shows that certain groups are targeted more than others. So even though these actions were meant to protect the country, they still limit civil liberties, which continues the same patterns we've seen in the past. So overall, across these time periods, my main argument is that the United States doesn't always apply freedom equally. When there's fear of a national crisis, the government tries tends to restrict rights at home, even while promoting freedom to the rest of the world. In my conclusion, I basically argue that American freedom has often been conditional. It depends on the situation, especially in times of fear or insecurity. And while the US still presents itself as a global leader of democracy, history shows that there's a gap between what it says and what it actually does. So that's basically my paper. Thank you for listening.